Hi, my name is Awilda Jimenez, and I'm the virtual content specialist from PS386 in the Bronx. I've created this teacher-facing video in partnership with Maria Friedland from the Division of Multilingual Learners. This video focuses on the Grade 4, Unit 3, Day 17, or the Part 2 lesson, entitled Choosing Sides, Patriot, Loyalist, or Neutral. Our focus question is what events led to the war with Great Britain. This teacher-facing video focuses on the introduction portion of the Part 2 of this lesson. The technology that I'm using is Pear Deck, which is an add-on in Google Classroom. And some of the scaffolds that you'll see in this presentation are building background knowledge, developing vocabulary, and giving access to grade level content. So in Part 2, we're looking at the unique perspectives of Blacks in colonial America on the Patriot and Loyalist causes. Our lesson objective is to explore hypothetical scenarios and secondary sources to explain how a person's identity in colonial America impacted their perspective on the Patriot and Loyalist causes. So you could begin with sort of a review showing what you know, have students interact on Pear Deck to list words and phrases that they would use to describe a patriot, loyalist, or neutral. So these are, students would type in their responses, and then the responses would populate on a Pear Deck slide, which can be shared with all students. So here's just some vocabulary from Part 1, and we want to reiterate that the intolerable acts were harsh punishments enacted by the British government against the colonists for their protests and tea parties. The big ideas for Part 2 include that enslaved Blacks had different reasons for being a patriot, loyalist, or remaining neutral. And it's important to make the distinction between the reasons they had versus the reasons that the colonists had from Part 1 of the lesson. Enslaved Blacks' perspectives were affected by their goals. Did they want to be free or remain as they were? And who you are and your experiences play a role in which side you choose, which is an ongoing theme that we've found in the past couple of lessons. Okay, so here again is the timeline of events that are leading up to this war. We are here in 1774 with the Intolerable Acts, right? Which comes right after the tea parties in New York and Boston and Philadelphia. This slide was from Part 1. So once student responses are populated on the Pear Deck, depending on the responses, you could choose to review this slide or have students listen to these slides one more time. Or you can choose to take them out from the introduction, but these slides were from Part 1. So students, for the introduction, they can make predictions based on what they know, what they've already known about the experience of enslaved Blacks in colonial America, to jot their thoughts on this prompt. Think back to what you have learned about the experiences and perspectives of Black people in colonial New York. How do you think Black people in colonial New York would have responded to the question, are you a patriot, a loyalist, or neutral? Why do you think they might have responded this way? Okay, this is a video from PBS Digital Studios. And the clip that I recommend is for students to watch from 1 minute and 9 seconds to 2 minutes and 53 seconds, because it shows the different perspectives that Blacks had to consider when choosing whether they were going to fight for the Loyalists or the Patriots or remain neutral. These are some guiding questions that can support students in rewatching the video and really trying to understand the perspectives from the enslaved Blacks. So the question is, according to the video, what caused slaves to make their decision to be a loyalist or patriot? Compare these reasons to colonists you read about in part one. What conclusions can you draw about why people chose to become a loyalist, patriot, or remain neutral? Again, it's really important for our students to make that distinction, that the role you played in society, the life you lived, how you were treated, really had an impact on which side you chose. And then finally, when students go over the video and sort of discuss what they've learned, this is the final slide that prepares students for the independent practice. American patriots, including George Washington, leader of the Continental Army and future first president of the United States, fought for liberty and equality. However, liberty and equality did not apply to thousands of people of African descent, especially slaves. Okay, another important message for students to understand, and they've already known this from previous lessons, that African Blacks were not treated equally because they were enslaved. And these are a summary of the opinions that enslaved Blacks or Africans had when it came to deciding whether or not they were going to be a patriot or a loyalist. So again, these are just some ideas that you could use to support students in taking the knowledge that they learned from part one and taking the knowledge that they learned from part two of this lesson to come up with a big understanding on point of view, perspective, and how complicated it was to choose a side, whether you were a loyalist, patriot, or remain neutral.